with inviting Natan Linder and Enno De Boer up for a conversation, and then there's going to be a demo, I think, and then there will be time for Q&A. So we'll get started with Digital Production Systems Reloaded. Welcome up.
Okay. All right.
Is this on? Okay. Great. Enno, please.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know you, maybe introduce yourself briefly.
Enno De Boer, I'm a senior partner at McKinsey, and I do all my work in manufacturing for the last 30 years across several industries. I've been also happened to build our Industry 4.0 practice over the last 10 years, and I've founded with the World Economic Forum the Global Lighthouse Network. Maybe you've heard of that, which brings together the best supply chains and manufacturing sites in terms of digitization, and we learn a lot from those lighthouses, what's happening at the cutting edge of the digital transformation.
Yeah, and that's actually where we met, and I tried my best to interrupt Enno anytime I could in the lighthouse to kind of have a healthy discussion, because it's been such a fun project to watch McKinsey and the WEF and everyone put together and evolve pretty awesome. So, and I think that started a lot of our conversation on what does it mean when you're trying to apply it to a new breed of production system. And this is kind of how we came into this topic of the digital production system reloaded. So we kind of designed it as a back and forth questions. And I think the entry point that I had to it real quick was, sure everybody know or heard about the Daiichi Ono at some point in their training, and this thing I love about Ono is that he was very clear about first principles, and I think those have not changed in Lean even till today. And I think when we're talking about reload, the product, it's like a tall branch to kind of climb to say, well, they need to be reloaded. But I think the first principle will be the same. And he said, like, people go to Toyota, they don't go to work, they go to think. And that made me thinking, like, well, what is, what would he do today with the same first principles, but all these other digital tools if he would build something like Lean from scratch, the first Toyota production system. So just as to kick us off. So,
well, look, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So we're now a decade into the fourth industrial revolution, and with 153 lighthouses, we just kind of announced the next batch, and with the event of Gen AI, what we have seen is that the entire digital transformation has accelerated by almost a decade. So we are seeing now the midpoint of where 50% of all the humankind work can be automated is 10 years put forward. So there's a massive acceleration. At the same time, if I talk to my strategy colleagues, one thing is very clear with all the geopolitics, with the climate, what's happening out in the world, that supply issues stay at the core. So we are like, what we are doing here is really like solving some of the most important things. Now, my question to you is, with all of this technology, everything that's there, with the clear need, why are manufacturers still struggling so much with the digital transformation?
I think when Jim Womack was here for the first time, and he was coming to see Tulip, and he wrote, of course, Machine That Changed the World, and we had this great meeting, and then he ends the meeting and he says, Lean failed. So this is kind of like the Pope saying, there's no God kind of thing. And I was like, Jim, what the hell are you talking about? And he said, like, look, we basically missed digital. So it's like a little bit, you leave a baby in the jungle and you're like asking me, like, why does it know how to speak or understand what's a car.
Yeah.
You know, it grew up in the jungle. So in a way, part of the struggle is that manufacturing operations were left behind, and they're in catch-up. And actually, if you tie it to your Gen AI comment, there's like, yes, the Gen AI will enable all this great wave of automation, and we could definitely help us deal with labor shortage with time, but there's like catch-up to do, and I feel like now operations is probably unshackling and so on, and they could quickly catch up, because there are definitely good news there. You know, I think the rate, while still DX is so hard, and you know, you kind of coined the term pilot purgatory. I think you you have the credit for that.
Yeah, I have the copyright.
You have the copyright.
Use it, it's 10 cents on
10 cents on each pilot purgatory right here, please. But it's like the reality is, like, I feel we're kind of done with the decade of Industry 4.0. People understand cloud, understand connectivity, understand data acquisition, understand you know, how you can put it all together in your mobile device, or you know, dashboards, you name it. It's more, in my view, remains a change management aspect, and that's what you should answer for. That's your job too. So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So the real question, if we want to accelerate, is on the approach. Is bigger, better, faster the right approach? Is it all or nothing? Is it incrementally? Like, what will accelerate this catch-up?
I feel that's a leading question here, somehow. So of course, bigger, faster, better is now. But like, honestly, I think it depends. It depends. The approach always depends. And it depends on what's your starting point and what's your strategy and what do you need to do. So if you have a really good lean foundation, if you have a really good, skilled, talented workforce, probably a more incremental approach is better, where it's more sustainable. You bring the tools in, and you let your workforce, you give them, you enable them, and you coined that. We're coming later to that with the greenhouse. You create this environment where they can prosper and where they can like literally lean forward and create productivity, growth, all the things that they need to do out of their own.
Is there a tension there between the rate of change? It's like, can you accelerate by small incremental changes versus like one big bang, or maybe one big bang could catalyze a lot of small ones? So
here's where it depends. So I think if you have the foundation and you also like you are not behind, then I think you have the time, and then that's the right speed. The speed is probably 5 to 10% productivity increase every year. And that's great, because the normal ones get maybe 2 or 3%. So you're lifting, and over time you're expanding. Now, if you have fallen behind, if you have not like literally a capable production system in place, if you have not a fully skilled workforce, then probably that's too slow. And probably you will see not the 5 to 10% in the first year, but you will need the first 2-3 years to catch up and fix the broken system, and then you get into that. And that takes so long that there's so much fatigue. You talked about change. Change management is, we need to get the job done within 36 months, because people get tired of that after 18, 24 months. You need to put a lot of energy to it. So back to your question is, I think if you're fallen behind, if you have big goals that you need to achieve to be competitive, then you need to find an approach that is faster. And then you go more for a lighthouse approach, where you say like, look, let's figure out this plant. What are the 5, 6 use cases that make a minimum viable product of a lighthouse, build that, create the first bush of impact, and then from there on you become incremental.
Yep. I think probably the most common approach I've seen is blending the two.
I think blending is right, and look, I think in the approach you always need to think about pace. Pace is important. If you go too fast, you leave everyone behind. If you go too slow, you fall in this trap of fatigue. So we see on the digital transformation that 86% of all digital transformations fail. Yep. 86%. So only 14% make it. And a big part of that is to find the pace that is right for like what your company needs, but also what your company can do.
Yeah. So rate of change and impedance match. But I think we're coming to your question now.
So, look, we might want to go to the next slide, and these are like the benchmarks that we have collected from the lighthouses. We have roughly 5,000 benchmarks across 700 use cases, and it's really interesting. What you see is digital solves almost everything. It's sustainability, productivity, agility, speed to market, mass customization, all of that can be solved. You also see it really depends on your starting point. It can be only 5% improvement, but it can be also tripling your performance. It really depends where you are and what you are. But I think with all of that, we have all these benchmarks, 5,000 benchmarks, 700 use cases that have been proven, 150 lighthouses. I think my question for you is, do we need to rethink now the production system? Because it's all there. Yep. Technology is there. So is this now a new production system that we need?
My take is a very violent yes. And the reason, I'll go back to here, the reason is very simple. It's like, it's the production systems that were built and designed, perfected, say, the past 30 years, are decaying. I've been to Japan several times this year, the origin of lean. You see amazing, factories, super organized, completely analog, and you kind of like don't understand how is this possible? Because theoretically, continuous improvement should have caught that. So there's like some inherent bug in how continuous...
But there was no continuous improvement.
That's my point.
We have lost it.
That's my point. So you need, we need to critically examine, those, I want to say, middle-aged plus to elderly production systems and understand how to, either inject some youth serum or reload them. Because some of them need to retire, honestly. Because you can use the same first principles like just in time and go to Gemba and Pokeoks, all the elements of Lean, 5S, tools and principles, and reduce waste based on data, so on and so forth. But if you're not really tying it to how people actually work today and how organizations therefore work, then you're by definition have the wrong production system. So this decay is what I think these benchmarks could inform to where you need to focus them, and they need to be built incrementally too. You can't do a whiz bang, in my opinion, and just please one new production system, please, and expect that to work. That will not work. That's part of the 86% you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, and I think you need to have a lot of patience. I think building a new production system, Toyota, they took in their first attempt, I think 30 years or something.
I know, but the end result is one of the best automotive and so on.
But I think people are around and thinking like, I can do this in a year, and probably it takes you 10 years to.
But here's the tangent where I'll ask you what you're telling your customers. Do you guys go to your customers and say, hey, we really need to work about your digital transformation? Or do you go and say, let's build a new production system together? It's a totally different mindset, right? Because if you think you're doing digital transformation, you're waiting for something to hit that actually never ends. And if you're building a production system, you're actually putting in frameworks, infrastructure to an ongoing process.
Yes.
So I'm curious how you all see it.
Well, again, it depends. I think we're not going to our clients and say, do you want a production system or a digital transformation? We say, like, do you want impact?
Yeah.
And most of them need impact.
Maybe that's why I'm not a consultant.
they need impact. And then we say, like, look, what do you need to solve for? And you figure that out. And then the question is, and I think back to your point is, then what is now better? Is it better to put in a system that is self-propelling, sustainable, and is further improving and self-healing? Of course, that's better. But you need to have, that is a bigger investment that you need to do. Or do you do, as a first step, a little bit of a step change and then put the system in place? So that's a little bit like where you need to play.
So before we bring Eddie and Phil up to show a bit of a demo, I want to ask you a quick question because I think it is important to ground it before we show stuff. So we hear a lot about composability. Obviously, we talk a lot about composability because we're opinionated. What are you hearing? How are they taking it as they're approaching these subjects of new production systems and new architectures?
I think there are two parts of the world. There's like a big part of the world is still the companies that are stuck in monolithic software, stuck in an old stack, and they will just run their systems to the very end. We're seeing that now, where they're then forced to rip it out because nobody
end of life, because stuff goes end of life.
It goes end of life, and then they are forced because they cannot kind of convince themselves to make the leap. And then you have a smaller group, I would say, of pioneers that really seeing the writing on the wall and see this as a real opportunity. And you see the benchmarks there. I think we have also looked into the ROI, like on the fast use cases, it's a 1 to 10. On even the more complex ones, it's still a 3 times ROI. So the return on investment is there, the impact is proven. So those pioneers are leaning forward into that. And of course, what do? They go into composability, because they have something that is there, and production you cannot rip out. So it needs to run, and you need to operate on the open heart. So it makes sense to bring in new pieces and then retire old pieces and do that in a step-by-step piece.
Great. So now we're going to share a bit of the joint work to facilitate this brave new future that is actually our reality. And I want to bring up here Eddie and Phil. Please join us. Thank you.
Make sure this thing is not locked here. Nice to see everyone. My name is Phil Long. I'm a senior asset leader at McKinsey with Enno, and I guide a group that focuses exclusively on helping our clients move forward with digital and analytical solutions. Eddie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Eddie Atkins, part of the ecosystem team. Been working closely with Phil on this, his digital production system that we're going to show you.
So we're just going to take a few minutes to showcase to you guys kind of the way that we think about a successful digital production system, how we're helping our clients do it, and show you how we're tying that together with Tulip as well to kind of bring it from the starting point of strategy all the way down to the front line and how you actually put this stuff into action. And there was a question that came in an earlier talk about are we necessary, right? The sort of role that we play. I think that was a great question, and I will say that, at least on the McKinsey side, we're really down in the trenches with our clients on these operations topics. And what that means is that we see where they're strong and we see where they have weaknesses. And even with some of the most impressive companies in the world, it's very common for them not to have a central node during their transformations to kind of bring together the core pieces of information that they need to be able to track it overall and make smart decisions. And that ranges from the CEO all the way down to managers. And so what we've been developing here is a platform to help our clients do that. So just to kind of quickly give you a taste of what this looks like. The digital production system, and of course this can be modified to fit kind of the look and the feel of whatever the company is. It does a few things. One, it codifies the knowledge that company has, best practices, how to go about doing particular types of procedures, etc. And this can be modeled however it makes sense for the company. A couple other things that it does, and just need to refresh this, is couple other things that it does is it makes sure that we know where to focus our energies in the first place. So McKinsey has a very large database of assessments that we run with clients across industries, across regions, to get a sense of where are they as far as their maturity on different metrics. That's built into the system such that the company can run these things at any level at any time that they want to understand where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. Then they can tie this to actual implementation plans, knowing where they need to improve, that you can see, and finally to the core KPIs that actually matter, that actually move the needle on the performance of the company. So just very quickly to kind of give you a sense of that, you as the CEO or whoever it may be that might be interacting with this could log in here and say, okay, at this particular site, I'm curious about the performance of my company on management systems and all of the kind of sub areas that fall underneath that. And I could come in here and say, well, on health and safety, we've got a problem, right, with this particular site, Site 1. Let's put some initiatives against this to really improve, right? You have the storehouse of knowledge that comes from either the client themselves or from McKinsey, and typically it's a combination of the two, right? And you can track this as deeply as you want to. Then on the roadmap, this is an overview of the initiatives that the client is pursuing. You can link these, right? We have our own system home built, but a lot of times we'll go in and the clients will have existing systems. So we build APIs so that you can easily kind of ingest the information and see where they stand against these things. And then as I was saying, importantly, kind of tying it all together, right? You know where you stand maturity-wise, you know what you need to implement, right? And how does that actually affect these KPI metrics that show you the performance of the company at the end of the day, right? Now, this is where it might get interesting here, is what we've done with Eddie and Natan and company is we've built in a view of a shop floor. And we're working on kind of different models of this that might be life science, et cetera. And you can look at the management system, people system, let's say the technical system, and I as a production manager might come in here and say, okay, I've had an initiative assigned to me that I need to pursue. How do I actually get this done on the shop floor, right? Well, that's the cool thing about what our Tulip friends have done. Might go in and say, okay, first pass yield, that's it. How do I actually do this? And then this is where we transition to putting the pedal to the metal.
Yeah, so as a production engineer that's maybe been given this instruction by my production manager to go and improve first pass yield, and he's seen this application in the digital production system, I'm able to go and look in here. This can be linked to our library or maybe to an application that the customer's designed internally themselves. I can learn about it, see if it's what we need. If it is, I can add the app into my instance straight from here. It will appear in my instance after it's been installed. Very quickly able to edit it, maybe add the actual inspection steps that I need, add the pass and fail criteria, and then very quickly deploy it to the shop floor, get it running on the shop floor, and be able to start walking through this application. Here, this is maybe I'm entering the serial number by hand. We could quite quickly connect that to a barcode scanner like you'll have seen in the tech. And I'm very quickly have an application that's starting to measure my first pass yield deployed on the shop floor, giving me some transparency into why I'm like, what's the real-time yield, why is it happening? I could start adding more slides to get more steps to actually get details about that information. So how we're going back to how we can connect this production system, this very top-down best practices with applications, use cases that can be deployed very quickly and become part of your jigsaw puzzle of applications.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. This is awesome. So it's really combining how old have McKinsey been doing operation practice transformation for a long time, right? So there's a lot of institutional knowledge.
Maybe 30 years?
Yeah, a lot of institutional knowledge, and now you're bringing it to clients, and I think it's like extremely exciting. I've never seen. Of course, we have all the Jiras and the collaboration platforms and all those kinds of things that happen in enterprise, but like to codify and have the digital production system taken first class from an enterprise perspective is it's very cool to see. I know it's the beginning, but good work, and we love to be part of it. So,
great partnership. Natan, I have a question for you, and I know we're running a little bit out of time, so I think we will do a quick back and forth. Is the digital production system incremental or revolutionary for you?
So for what I've said just a second ago, I think it's the beginning of revolution, and it has a high chance of becoming revolutionary because I think it is possible with open knowledge exchange and the libraries and the combination with other platforms, eventually Gen AIs, to kind of support new production system from the ground up with software from day one, and that no one has done that before. We've been stuck in many siloed B2B enterprise software tools forever, and now it's time to change that. So if that's the case, the question I have for you is, how field tested is this? When you show this to customer, how are they adopting? Is this smoke and mirrors, or is this like people are saying, I'm going to use this day in, day out?
Look, I think there's no question. I think we're like 3 years past the point of hype here on the digital production system. Mm-hmm. It's real, 153 lighthouses, more to come. There's no question. Everyone is doing this. Everyone is going down that path. Everyone is trying a little bit their own way to do it. Some go big bang, some go incremental, but in the end, everyone knows that they need to renew their production system. So there's no question. Field tested, yes. 5,000 benchmarks, I would say. Is it real? Yes.
So when customers come and meet this for the first time, can you share a bit about like what do they need to go through to actually start adopting something like that from a McKinsey transformation perspective?
Look, I think they need to clearly understand and articulate what they want to drive with it. Mm-hmm. Because it needs to be clear, there needs to be a return, there needs to be impact, and then building back from the customer impact that they want to create, they then need to figure out how they go about it. Where do they start? In what speed they do it? Kind of what approach they take. There's many ways to do this. And as we talked about it, like the pace is important. And that's, I think, in the entire change management, I think two things I see. A lot of companies get the pace wrong. They're either too fast or too slow. And the other thing is they don't take enough focus on, it's all about whether I get the adoption from the workforce, from the frontline. Mm-hmm. Like, if I don't get the adoption, and if I don't get 100% adoption, I have a real problem. And I see this with too many digital tools that are like great things, they're put on the shop floor, and nobody's adopting them.
Yeah, it's a great point, especially as it relates, to the adoption part. If people don't adopt, they basically very little exhibited change in work.
What do you see coming on the tech stack? Will we see a consolidation? Is the end game Tulip all?
Well, not really. I think the largest and most important technology companies on the planet have been, and I'm specifically talking about software companies, have made it part of their value sets to be extremely open and collaborative for a reason. I'm not, I'm talking about Google Envy with all sorts of lofty things like do no evil and things like that. It's more like focus on what our customers, because I think those are declarations, and they supported some good use cases, but also a business model that is pretty evil, if you ask me. But the reality is that the way we are set up as a company is to support the goals of manufacturing operation-driven organizations that want to change how they work. And it would be extremely arrogant to think that one company can ever do that. So I think it's absolutely an ecosystem, takes it all type of approach that solves for the customers. And will there be some consolidation? Look, do I think the world needs like 200 machine monitoring companies? No, it doesn't. There's no reason. And it's been far too long that we've been stuck with too many point solutions that are not scaling, very small in nature, too vertical, geographically centered, and stuff moves to the platform. So we will see some consolidation. But the last point I'll make on the tech stack as we are wrapping up here, the future tech stack it needs at the end of the day to converge to the state of the art that we're seeing on the internet. Anything less than that is not okay. So if we're happy with what's running our data centers or banks, governments, whatever you want to call it, and that's what we should expect for operation. And it's still not the case. So we have work to do implementing those digital production system and put the stacks in there. So we have to finish up here. We're going to invite folks to see stuff in action right across the hallway over there. Enno, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan.
Yep, and thank you all for tuning in here. We have questions. Now it's time to attack us with we wanted to hear people's
some provocative questions.
Yeah, and criticism and all the things. What?
Only provocative.
Only provocative, please. There's a mic in the back. I'm sorry. Maybe we can run it out if that's okay from the Tulip team. Be easier. Just raise your hand and we'll get it to you. There's 2 questions here.
Hi. So one of the reasons that you mentioned 80% of these digital production systems fail is that it doesn't have enough adoption. What would you say is an effective strategy for driving adoption among the stakeholders?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not 80%, but 86. It's a big difference. Second...
That's like several tens of millions in McKinsey world.
Look, I think this is a hard part. I think it's about engaging the front line early on in the design. I think that's why we like Tulip. I think having no-code software that allows literally the frontline operator to co-create and do that, I think is a huge deal in the old world. And that's why the Toyota production system, when it was invented, was quite against. Like I still remember 30 years ago, we were quite against any technology because it would mean you would create that technology, somehow you would scribble it, then you would give it to someone in IT. 6 months later, you get something back that looks very different, and you will never adopt it. So I think this co-creation is really important, and I guess that's a segue maybe for you.
Yeah.
Citizen development.
Yeah, I think it is. We say citizen development, but I think more accurate is to say there's like citizen engineer development, and then there's like citizens. So it's like democracy all the way, and I can explain it through anecdotes, like to tell you what I've seen work, quick ones that drive adoption faster. So one trick that people do, and this is from leadership, is and they say, we are going to start in earnest after we have a certain percentage of the organization being trained. And that's easy to do. Why? Because you go on the online learning at Tulip, or if you have if you want to do it more formal, like we have the means to do it. Other partners of ours have means to do it. We've done it a bunch of times with McKinsey, and you first just educate before you solve anything, and so that's number one. So there's some familiarity. The thing that comes usually after that is train the trainer. So suddenly you're building those citizen engineer developers like to run around and start looking for problems, solving them on their own. So that's pretty cool. And then when you ask the actual citizens that needs to get it, because like the operators, associates online, they don't, like you should imagine that some people went through entire careers, nobody ever asked them, what do you think about this tool that you're asked to be used, even once in their life. So you go to them, say, well, what do you think? And then say, well, I like this, I don't like that. And hours to days, you come back and you show something, hey, this is not working. So you know what you're telling them? That we care about your opinion, so you get adoption. And then those citizen engineers that actually build, as soon as they do that, there's a feedback loop. They care about their customer. Suddenly they have a customer internally. And then the other thing that happens is like their baby is the software itself. So they care about that. So it's not like something the CIO gave them. It's like, you take care of this and everybody have to use it. So it's like adoption happens when people choose to use as opposed to being told to use. And if you follow those principles, I think you get there. I think we had another question down there. Yeah.
Hi. Question from my side. I see that the production system often gets, let's say, seen as a repository of knowledge only, right? So that's why from our side at Roche, we are also thinking to expand the functionality to a more decision-making system. Would be great to get a bit of your, let's say, understanding. For instance, can we not leverage more simulation capabilities, sensitivity analysis to say, myself as an executive, I would like to understand if I'm increasing 5% my budget, can you help me with intelligence to distribute it to activities where it makes sense? Can you help me to show what kind of impact I would generate if I'm investing 5% more? Not to really advance the production system more to a decision system.
I think spot on. Look, I think these are all the tools that you need to put into the toolbox. And I see a big challenge with decision making. A lot of decision making happens quite non-fact based, unfortunately, because it's just too difficult to pull the data together if you have not done the hard work of pulling it all together. And if you do it on a question-by-question basis, it takes typically 2-3 weeks, and then the question and the decision is maybe outdated already. So yes, I think decision support will be a huge thing. And this, like you can see some forms of co-pilots, and you've talked about this as well in different forms, like to help decision making, but also to prioritize and to identify, like all these kind of things. It's all part of the problem-solving approach. Yeah.
Yeah. I talked earlier about action-driven architectures, and this is something people should, I think, take very seriously, because it makes no sense to invest into all this, and it is an investment. There's a transformation from the old way of doing things, data servers and all that kind of stuff, into cloud-based architectures, and that has cost associated, not just hard dollars, but also to get it to production, and then like just treat it like the old infrastructure. So you're just like, okay, what have you done? And I think part of why I love this word augmentation is because, and I double down on the word decay as I describe old school production system. So in a way is that if I'm in what I'm advising people is like in the position that you can take what's working based on first principles, that with no technology you still want continuous improvement and operational, all that kind of stuff, and discard all the old stuff that is not getting enough data-driven XYZ to actually move the needle, and force it into a decision-making apparatus. And that could be completely analog in the way you do, like you can have a very digital system, brand new production system, all that kind of stuff, but then get in a room and talk about it, and you can have all the way to like, the way we do FP&A in Tulip, like we have this tool, like you feed it scenarios and like you can tell you this and that. Like it's only as good as we use it. Are we using it as the best we could? Probably not. So some of that part is in how you behave once this is up and running. So I think those two things are fairly combined, and there's stuff to discover there. So I'm kind of excited to see. I think they need to change, but I don't think we know exactly what exact form that they will take in the next few years are going to be pretty great in defining that. Yeah.
Let's take another couple of questions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Eddie, again, I have a question. I think when we deploy a production system like we've been talking about, we're going to end up with lots of applications generating internet-level data, like
already happening, yeah.
Google use that data to influence our decisions on buying and etc. Do we see clients using data at that scale to influence sustainable, like change management, or what do you think we could use it for? How do you think that's going to pan out?
I think we're at the very start to see that, and I think there's a couple of leaders that have really figured it out, that are doing this already. It's not a lot. I think it's a small percentage, and then the rest is trying to figure this out.
Yeah. Look, this is definitely starting to happen. We're approaching a rate of 6 billion event on Tulip per year. We'll cross 20 billion.
It's impressive.
Yeah, and it's growing. If you look at the exponents, it's growing in a pretty healthy clip. So first, it's already internet scale data, and there are many examples, not just Tulip, that you see similar trends. And this data is highly contextualized, and if the enterprise is big enough and can pipe this data to its cloud data warehouse infrastructure, then it gets picked up and by the same tools that they use to drive a financial decision or business scenario decision or any decision that could support business to do functionally what it needs to do. And there's many. We have supply chain platforms that try to predict like when do we need to order what, and we have demand forecasting and all these kind of things. So those things are going to be enriched, and the problem that I think we experienced is that most operational data was latent. It's like you would say, get me the report, and like you would be lucky if you get what you need like in a couple of weeks, and now you can do this stuff real time, and that changes the game. And companies who are not going to do that are not going to remain competitive. It's kind of that simple. So
it's that simple.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I think we need to run you the mic.
Thanks. So you mentioned 3 things a lot: change management, lack of adoption, and a lot of projects failing. And it seems to me that those 3 things are connected, because people generally don't like change, which means they don't adopt, which means the project fails. I was at a SaaS conference recently, and I think it was the CMO of Monday.com, and she said that they struggled for years with change management. And as soon as they stopped talking about change management and started talking about improvement instead, then everything changed. So would you say that that might also be part of the solution, is to just stop talking about change management and start talking more about improvement?
I don't know. Like, look, stop talking about yes, because we need to act on it. Now, improvements alone, will that solve it? I think there's a lot of learnings about when change works and where not, and how adults change, because we're like, they're behavioral patterns. So you need to have the understanding on conviction. So someone needs to explain you the why. you need to have a role model, someone who you really respect who's doing this. We've tried to create this with the lighthouses, some role models, but you need role models within your company. If the top team is not playing it, like, then you probably will not adopt it. You need to have some trainings and some capability building, because probably to adopt the change, you need to learn something new, and you're afraid of it. And so there needs to be some support system in that. And then there needs to be an incentive system. We're like, literally, we are wired to incentives, and I see it always with my kids. Like, it's not different. Like my daughter would just like not hit any ball on the tennis course until I told her, look, if you hit now 50 in a row, you get a toy. And she hit 60 immediately, from like 5 in a row to 60. Just put out an incentive, it's working. So you need to have the right incentives in place. And you need to work with those 4 things really in a very, like, we're engineers, so we're only working on the solution, but we need, with a similar rigor, like, really make sure that we're hitting all kind of these things repeatedly. Then change is happening. So I think that's the like, literally the playbook that we are using for change management.
I want to add a quick anecdote before we're completely out of time. So I was in Japan and walking a factory, and they built all sorts of stuff, and internally in tools, and we're doing a Gemba walk. And then one of the things that was striking to me, and they built, is kind of an avatar per operator. Okay, so if your skill versatility matrix is, imagine it's 1 to 10, so like your avatar is like growing with you. So it's like it's getting more trinkets and weapons, and knows how to do poses. And it was first of all, it's Japan, so it's like, it was amazing. Like, I don't know where they got all the cool icons, and connected that to their metrics and their OEE and all sorts of stuff like that, and to the skill versatility scores. But you can generalize that. It's they basically gamified the operation to a point that people are involved and care about it just the way they care about, I don't know, some app they're running on their phone and that they're regularly going, because let's face it, like, we're all addicted to that. So I think there's something to trust about the new generation, the new leaders that are coming, that they will be digital native, they will have short attention span.
I'm really worried with that, like, so to put a counterpoint to that. So okay. I think the Toyota productions, there's no, it's not a miracle that was invented on the Eastern Hemisphere in Japan and not on the Western, because there is just in the culture more discipline and more following to a top-down approach. So change management for them is much easier than for us. And I think what you're describing with the digital natives, with ADD and with all the short intention, I think change management will become even more difficult. That's my hypothesis. So I think figuring this out will, I think if you figure out the change management piece, if you figure out to create something that creates high adoption that the frontline likes, I think then you have some secret sauce to win. If you don't figure that out, Prost Mahlzeit.
Yep. I kind of agree, but I want to remind us that a lot of what made the production system work is like underlying work of the Demings and the likes,
yep.
That kind of said, well, I got to have a system to measure, and says like, learning is I'm probably butchering the quote, but learning is optional, but is not. But survivability is optional. Like that was he was yep. questioning, and so which kind of laid the ground for continuous improvement. So I don't think that is changing, but I do think the generational change is real, and like it's like people who are more technology first that want to see their organizations move away from the clipboard and actually care about what they have to say, because like all day long we're giving feedback in 360 degrees, yeah. And that's really where I'm coming from. But we could stay and talk about this for many more hours if you just let us, but we're really out of time. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. And we're going to wait for all your new production systems.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Anna.